Warning: this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences.
The horror in the hotel. I've been exploring deserted buildings for a few years now, urban exploring as they call it. Me and two friends, who'd want to remain anonymous, had started checking out old buildings while we were at university in Birmingham. We didn't live too far apart after graduation, so we would usually try and met up every month and go exploring, trying to keep that spirit of being the boys, being mates. We'd been meaning to explore somewhere in the country for a while. We'd done the urban stuff, churches, creepy, a hospital, sketchy, any number of abandoned old office blocks, and even an old schoolhouse once. You get the idea. Northern English cities have got urban decay down to a fine art. But the trouble was, a lot of the places we'd explore were already documented online, and we didn't feel like explorers at all, more like tourists. The whole point of these nocturnal expeditions was to capture a sense of adventure and exploration. We started doing research online, looking for our next location. We wanted somewhere that wasn't everywhere on the internet. We were looking for something a little bit off the beaten track. Anyway, we found an old hotel. It was called the Clement and is in northern England. I cannot really be more specific. It's isolated, a fair few miles from the nearest town. I apologize for being so vague, but I have my reasons, as you will understand, and considering this is the internet, if anyone really wanted to find the hotel they could do so. The hotel had been deserted for decades. Ownership of the property was being contested in the courts, and had been for years, leaving the building fall ever further into dereliction. But we didn't intend to ask for permission to enter. We never do. It kind of spoils the thrill. Sure, it's trespassing. Though equally, we wouldn't ever damage or steal anything. We take photos and that's it. The Clement was built in 1911. Only a few years before the outbreak of World War I. As you can imagine, the war meant the hotel didn't take off. Instead, it eventually found a use as a hospital for injured soldiers. After the war, the hotel continued to struggle. The economy was depressed, and it wasn't until the mid-1930s when the hotel business started to pick up. However, World War II soon saw the hotel's return to usage as a hospice for injured soldiers. After the war, the hotel once again tried to establish itself, but the restricted post-war economy and continuance of rationing made lavish resort hotels such as this redundant. The hotel has been abandoned in the decades since. The legal battle for ownership has been going on for some years now. The complications seemingly stemmed from the fact that a number of the property's beneficiaries had passed away or emigrated. The night we drove down was clear and very chilly for April. The three of us were well stocked up: cameras, extra batteries, food, and a bit of brandy to keep out the chill. The journey went quickly. We were excited, as we always were, to go exploring. We planned each trip meticulously, and so, even though we headed ever deeper into the countryside, we knew where we were going. Eventually we found the motorway turn-off and negotiated the myriad country lanes until we arrived at the turn-off to the hotel itself. There were no signs, and the night was very dark as there was no moon. The road to the hotel was more like a gravel driveway. We turned the car's lights off as we didn't want to be seen by any security guards, however unlikely it would be to encounter any here, and slowly made our way down the tree-flanked driveway. As the lights were off, visibility was shit. Only a few yards in front. Driving down the path seemed to take an age. The car bounced off dozens of potholes. At last, the hotel was in sight. Neglect and the passage of time had conspired against the building. It was crumbling. Soon the decay would surely be so bad that the building would need to be pulled down. The majority of the windows were smashed. The main entrance doors were padlocked with a heavy chain, and an assortment of warning posters prohibited entry. The building displayed some vestiges of its Edwardian glamour, but the intervening decades had been cruel, stripping the building to a shell of its former self. We walked around the outside of the hotel to gain our bearings, and also to make sure we were alone. Satisfied that there were no security patrols, the three of us entered through one of the many smashed windows into what was once a restaurant/dining area. Almost straight away, there was something not quite right. It's hard to explain, but all three of us were creeped out in a way that we had never been previously. We were no strangers to this sort of thing. We'd explored a Victorian-era hospital before now, and that was the definition of creepy. I think the smell was a warning too. It was an overpowering damp smell. Acrid. I remember saying at the time how a stench like this would give you a headache. We explored the ground floor, comprising of a reception and lobby area, bar, small casino/gaming room, the hotel kitchens, and a tea room conservatory. Most of the furniture had been removed, and that which remained was rotten and smashed. The glass conservatory was covered in broken glass, and we didn't spend long there, fearful of a falling shard. We debated leaving at this stage. There was something just not right about the place, and one of my friends complained about the onset of a headache, the foul moldy smell no doubt. But on the other hand, we had traveled quite a long way to come here, and it would feel like shortchanging ourselves to leave without at least exploring a couple of the guest rooms and getting a few more pictures. We ascended the main stairs to the second floor. The building was only 2 stories high, so we anticipated that we would be soon finished exploring and be on our way home. The damp moldy smell was even stronger, and it couldn't be too healthy to be breathing it in for that long. We started to look through some of the guest rooms. Like as the ground floor, TT appeared that much of the furniture had been removed, only the occasional bed frame or cabinet remained. We wouldn't spend too long looking around essentially empty rooms. But the rooms were not all empty. I think it was the third room we looked in. There were a few squat red candles that were atop a bedside table, though they were not lit. And the bed itself looked to have been occupied recently. Whoever had slept there had used newspaper as bedding. On the ceiling was some graffiti, the quote "Abandon hope, ye who enter here." And while the graffiti was hardly original, after all it's a well-known quote from Dance Inferno, what separated this graffiti from more normal graffiti was the fact that it looked to have been smeared on the ceiling using mud, or without wishing to put too fine a point on it, smeared in something visually similar to mud. And considering that the hotel had been empty for years, it was surprising that this was the first graffiti we had come across. It really freaked us out. Who would write this and take the time to write it on the ceiling? And what the hell did they use for ink? In the next room, there was more weirdness, and really this was our opportunity and sign to leave. Again, there was graffiti, but this time it was a small spidery yet neat script, and it appeared as through the writing had been done with a biro pen. There were literally thousands upon thousands of words written on the wall. We took stock of a few sample passages, all on the theme of headaches, how the pain affects their vision and hearing and even thoughts, how it stops them from sleeping, how when the headaches come they couldn't remember things. We took dozens and dozens of pictures. What we had seen so far was weird, and certainly a tale to tell at parties, but it was nothing more than strange. In the next room, however, there were 7 dates written on the wall, again written with mud. I can't for the life of me remember what they were. They were all about 5 to 10 years ago. I've even had hypnosis to try and recall what the dates were, but to no avail. Adjoined to this bedroom was an ensuite bathroom. Well, the police have asked the 3 of us to not disclose certain details. From the looks of things, this bathroom was being used to develop photographs, like a darkroom. There were chemicals and trays used in developing photographs scattered about the room. But most striking were the dozen black and white photos hanging from the shower curtain rail. There are certain details the police have requested we don't disclose publicly. The photos were of people, men, women, black, white, old, and young. Many of the photos looked as though the person taking the photo had tried to remain hidden from the person they are photographing. It looked like they were taken from behind bushes or foliage, giving the impression the photographer was spying on them. Other photos of the same people were quite clearly crime scenes, and these are the pictures the police don't want us to talk about. It was time to get out of there. But as we turned to leave, we heard a voice. Now it would be pointless to try to describe how we felt hearing the voice. Scared doesn't quite cover it. The voice was coming from someone standing in the corner of the room. He was facing the wall, and we had not noticed him before as he was standing behind a wardrobe. "Please leave now," said the man, in an English accent I couldn't quite place. Lit up now by our 3 torches, we could see that despite having the physique of a boy, it was actually an old man, though he had jet black hair. He was dressed in a suit, it was threadbare and covered in smears of muck. "What if I visited you in your house in the middle of the night?" He gently shook his head though he continued to face the wall. His voice had a sing-song quality. The 3 of us were frozen with fear, despite us outnumbering him and him being of a small stature. "You wouldn't like it, would you, if I came to your houses?" He stressed the word "I" churlishly, sounding like a petulant child. His head shaking became twitchy, and for some reason I prayed he didn't turn around. I just felt a very strong aversion to seeing his face. The 3 of us were incredibly scared. I needn't dwell on it too much. One of my friends said that we'd leave, and that there was no harm done, and that we'd never come back. The man told us to leave our cameras on the floor. We did so without question. The man never turned from facing the wall in the corner. The last thing he said was, "There is no greater sorrow than to recall happiness in times of misery." We ran then, you know, I mean we really ran, like we flew back to the car. We drove home, in silence. Speed limits were 70 miles per hour, we were doing 120 easy. We spoke to the police later that night, and told them everything. They didn't believe us at first but we insisted. Finally the police agreed to visit the hotel, and they found a lot of what we said would be there, and took statements from us. Apparently the dates written on the wall had been smudged, so that they were now completely illegible and the photos were gone. They said they couldn't tell us much as it's an ongoing investigation. All this was a few weeks ago, and I've only just left the police station again, having left my second statement. I'm just sitting in my car now. I don't know where to go, or what to do. I thought I'd write this as it gives me an excuse to sit outside the police station longer. I can't go home. It's not safe. When I woke up this morning there was a photo on my bedside table. It was a picture of me sleeping. Whoever had taken it was standing next to my bed. And written on this photo in an all too recognizable spidery handwriting was another quote from Dance Inferno: "The more a thing is perfect, the more it feels pleasure and pain."